I guess we need to, do you hear me? Oh, great. Well, glad to be here. Great pleasure to share some of the experiences and work that I do in the area of making thinking visible, implications for the development of executive functions and literacy acquisition. I like to set these goals. First, we want to understand how making thinking visible shape the development of executive functions and the theory of mind in young children. What are the implications of developing these skills in children? And how does a culture of thinking create a context that promotes learning and thinking in children? Well, as you know, this initiative started with Project Zero researchers. Here I just put some of the presenters that are attending this conference. As you know, David Perkins, Ron Richard, and Shari Tishman. And I'd like to start with something that David Perkins says about thinking. He says that one simple problem with thinking is that it is invisible. So the basic philosophy of this initiative is to make thinking more visible in classrooms so that children can see their own thinking and teachers can see it at work so they can get a hold of it and improve it. And this has been the challenges that I've been setting myself to understand how to make this work in classrooms. And a little overview of the visible thinking is the cultural forces that Ron Richard developed, starting with the importance of expectations for thinking and learning, opportunities for engaging in thinking. When you have high expectations, you expect children to think, and then you provide them with opportunities. And with during those opportunities, you want to have conversations that are rich, and that's why when you use the thinking routines that I'll introduce you very lightly in this presentation, you have language and conversations around thinking. Teachers or the adult is always modeling thinking, and letting children become aware what thinking is. The interactions show respect for the child because all children can think. So if all children can think, we need to have to provide them with different experiences that allow them to use their thinking. And the physical environment, which is basically capturing that thinking and making it available for the child. So as David said, so you can hold of it and use that information first for the child, for the teacher, so the teacher can have good conversations with children, and for the parents, because the parents are part of the process. And something very important, it's time. And about time is something that we always sacrifice because we are always in a rush, but I have seen in my research that slowing down is really powerful to promote good thinking and to engage children in communicating. So here are all the cultural forces, they all work together. And Ron has already talked about this yesterday. So I'm going to be very, very superficial with this framework. So at this point, I want to share with you a group of 3-year-olds who are involved in a thinking routine that see, think, and wonder. Once that they are doing the see, think, and wonder, seeing this painting from Carmen Lomas, they are asked to see things from different perspectives. They are using the circle of viewpoints. That's another thinking routine.
Give it to Montserrat. Take a look at the image. Just take a look. What do you see here?
A boy.
A boy? Do you see something else?
That little thingy.
What is that little thingy like that? What shape is that? Una T, una cruz. Very good. What does it mean?
I see somebody sick.
You see somebody sick? Let me finish with this top here. What it means this T here? It means that this takes care of this little girl. It's a, who is the boy? He told me it's six. It's a boy. It's a girl. What do you think, Tommy? He looks like you?
That's from India.
Who is from?
They grow on the groove.
It looks like from India? Why do you think so?
Porque esta cruz la tienen en la iglesia para que sepan que es una iglesia.
¿Para qué, Marcela?
Porque acá se murió el niño Dios.
¿Dónde se murió el niño Dios?
Acá.
You think that's el niño Dios?
Sí, porque se parece. Y esto lo vivimos.
¿En qué se parece? Espera un poquito. ¿En qué se parece el niño Dios con él?
Se parece porque acá tiene una virgen, acá tiene una cruz, tiene fotos, una lámpara, el remedio, algo para coserse las cosas, una virgen de cuadro, una camisa, una cartera, un hilo.
Think from the point of view of the girl. So let's think. And now we're going to be the boy. Yeah, we have an issue here with Grant because he thinks that the girl is a boy, which is okay. He's trying to get up on the bed. Get up. Here, right next to me. Sit down.
Okay, with this picture of practice, you could see how the children are engaged in conversations. The teacher, well, this is a short clip, a larger amount of time, but the teacher here is valuing children's thoughts. One child thinks that it's a boy or a girl, the teacher values. The teacher gets to know the children know. And surprisingly enough, when you saw that little boy that was talking a lot about the things that you see, when I do this with adults, adults see half of what children see. It's amazing the power that children have to observe things, and we underestimate, we don't take advantage of that. But children can get a lot of evidence to justify their thinking when they are able to see things. So here we use the following thinking routines: the see, think, and wonder, think, pair, and share, because the children were sharing their thoughts. What makes you say that? The teacher was continuously asking that. The circle of viewpoints, when the teacher asked the children to see things from different perspectives. And you could see how literacy is reflected here because the teacher is continuously modeling. Later on, you will see this teacher conducting another experience where the children are actually representing their thoughts in writing. So the thinking routines are basically structures that create the dispositions for children to think. They are goal-oriented, and the goals are usually a thinking goal. They have just few steps. And all of these are research-based ideas that came from classrooms where teachers succeed, where teachers using these in a variety of contexts, and the children were engaged in good thinking. So the eye sees only what the mind is prepared to comprehend. This allows us to know, when children are seeing an image, this allows us to know how the children are making connections in their brain to how those connections activate their prior knowledge and how they made their hypotheses and talk about the things that are connected to their lives. That's why it's so important to have this as a starting point. So the culture of thinking, defined by Ron Richard, exists in classrooms with the cultural forces of that classroom are directed toward and aligned with the support of good thinking. So you were able to see how this teacher was valuing children's contributions. She was creating opportunities to activate what they're thinking. She was using thinking routines, and she was capturing children's thoughts in writing, which is a very important model that we will see later. So learning is a consequence of thinking. But I could also say is that learning, that literacy, becoming literate is also a consequence of thinking. So the interplay between language and cognition of children's language and literacy development in the first and second language. So there's theories from Piaget and Vygotsky that are talking about the relationship between language and cognition from different perspectives. And they are all interrelated. So talking about cognition, I would like to talk about three important concepts. There's metacognition, the theory of mind, executive functions, and as a result, language development. The examples that you will see here are related to a research that I did with children from different schools, and I'm still doing in different countries also, trying to find out what are the concepts of children's thinking. So initially, we asked them what is thinking, and since they are young, they are to draw, then they dictate this to the teacher, and that's what we are getting out of that. So we do this before and after implementing the visible thinking. So here's the teacher tells the children what is thinking, and she asks to draw, and then the children dictate their message. So the idea is that language and cognition depend on this mental work. So what is metacognition? It comes from it's about and thinking. It's thinking about thinking. It's the ability to reason, make sense of ideas and actions, plan and think in the future, critical and creative thinking, reflection, thinking about thinking. Thinking about thinking is the capacity to self-regulate learning and understanding strategies to solve problems. It's important that children become aware of how they can solve problems or their preference when they are doing something, because in that way they learn how to learn, and no matter where they are learning about themselves, and their learning becomes more intentional. An example, a classroom example of a teacher in her first week of school setting the culture of thinking in her classroom. For her, it was important to let the children understand what is thinking, so she started with the question, what thinking is? We also use, as a reference, a research that Ron Richard did, and he presented yesterday, learning what children think about thinking, but we also did our own research, and we found our own classification of children's dimensions of thinking. So first one is the associativeness, when children say, well, I'm thinking about my mom. The second one is using strategies, and the third one is metacognition. Of course, at the beginning, we didn't find metacognition, but after, and you will see a child later on talking about thinking, and that happens once that you implement visible thinking ideas. So this is a kindergarten classroom.
What did we put on our thinking wall, Gio?
We put this paper to think.
Okay.
Like there's little pictures in our brain, in our TV, and to think when we close our eyes.
So what I hear that Gio is saying is he's telling me what is thinking. And I hear, Gio, that you're giving me a strategy for thinking. So a way that we can think
text and then your brain talks.
I see that you were also using a strategy for thinking, a way that helps you think the best.
Tell you where the food is going.
And you told me that the brain has pictures and you think about those. So I see that you're telling me, Mauricio, that you're using imagery to tell me about what you think.
Over there, David says, what is
Says what is thinking.
this is me thinking.
Look at that.
I'm just me thinking.
Yeah.
You put your hand like this. No, like this. Hey, look. Hey, thanks.
What did Aina do, Nico? What did she do?
Oh my God.
So you could see how the teacher is starting to use the language of thinking, because it's important that children know the type of a process that is happening in their heads. Of course, children think. But when we talk about teaching them to think, it's also making them aware of the type of thinking that they are using to solve any type of problem. Work on that. They become more metacognitive with that. So here are some other things that children were revealing. We were also interested in finding out the theory of the mind that they develop. Theory of the mind is the capacity to understand what other people know, think, or feel. Understand that the images in the mirror are themselves, and that's how they develop their theory of mind. Understanding the theory of mind is very important, because literacy is the use of is a symbol that we use and that we all agree to use in order to communicate. Writing is a written language. That's oral language, but we also have other languages that are as valuable as this. But today we are concentrating in this language. What I have seen is that when children see the need of communicating with others, they find their way. And you are probably familiar with this cute video, but see how young ages start understanding each other. So what do we get from this beautiful video? Is that also communication depends on turn taking. I'm sorry. And it also depends on having expressive language and receptive use of language. You always need someone to hear what you say, and that's why this theory is so important. So just put in some humor here. It's Mafalda. The more than once I ask myself, how do we get along so well if we are so different? We must recognize that we have good time together. Perhaps that's why we are friends. And for those of you who are not familiar with Mafalda, she's a Latin cartoon, and Mafalda doesn't get Susanita, that little girl. So when you have a dilemma, the best thing is to ask a friend for advice. If I were you, I will. If I were you, I will. Finally, I never get to know what I will do, if he will be me or if I will be me. So it's a little puzzle there. So the theory of mind develop socio-cognitive skills, and the socio-cognitive skills are very important for conversations, and that helps children develop vocabulary. And children who have good vocabulary, they can understand text better. So the other topic that we need to understand is the executive function. It occurs in the frontal part of the brain, and it is a set of mental processes that help to connect past experiences with the present action. The National Scientific Council on the Developing Child, they use this metaphor that the executive function is like an airport. The brain is like having an air traffic control system at a busy airport to manage the arrivals and departures of dozens of planes on multiple runways. So that's what our brain is doing on a daily basis when we connect with other people, when we are doing all kinds of activities. And so the brain is always organizing, analyzing, focusing, monitoring, making decisions. That's what we are always doing to do things in our lives. So the executive functions are related with the brain functions that make people execute ideas. They organize and integrate and manage other functions. The executive function make people capable of predicting consequences of their action at a short and long term and to plan results. Another important thing about executive functions, it allows people to be capable of assessing the actions when they have to act and make necessary adjustments when something is not working. That means that the person is taking control of the things that you do. And that's how we learn. We don't have to blame teachers if we don't learn. We have to take our ownership in our own learning. We are our own teachers. Ron Richard says that schools are increasingly take the mission of cultivating students' thinking dispositions and then cultivating the habits of mind that can support lifelong learning. The issue of how students construct thinking and their general metacognitive awareness comes from the fore. So if you take a look at the habits of mind also, if you want to manage your impulsivity, you need to control yourself. If you want to be persistent, that's something that you can control. Also, the way that you want to learn and use your different senses, or the way that you use your thinking and you become more metacognitive. All of these can be intentional and allows us to take control of our lives. So here's a short video where you could see children who had already been exposed to visible thinking and how they conceptualize their use of their thinking when they are learning.
What are some of the routines that we've worked with so far?
Think, puzzle, explore.
Think, puzzle, explore. In our class, we've been working with different thinking routines, which have exposed the children to the language of thinking, really. So when we introduce new thinking routines, they make connections to prior ones that we've used. For instance, when we first started with the 3-to-1 bridge, when I gave them instructions as to what was required in each part, they made connections to the think, puzzle, explore.
When you puzzle something, you could think, if you forget something, you could maybe do it again, and that's how you puzzle.
When we do something, we can do it again.
You puzzle the words in your head, and then you raise your hand, and then the teacher picks you if you already have your thoughts in order.
So you see how the children are becoming more metacognitive, and that's because the thinking routines that are strategies that are helping them to get into that. So it's important to plan a strategy for making careful, informed decisions. So children, as you saw the little child before, and how she can manage her impulsivity before talking, she has to put her thoughts in order. conscious of your own steps and strategy during the act of problem solving. So that little girl who said, okay, when you don't know a question or you forget something, then you question something. And questioning is another cognitive process that is very important. And reflect on and evaluate the productiveness of these strategies so that we can change them if they are not working. That's important too. So early experiences shape the development of executive functions. And young children can be involved in different experiences. So here I want to share a beautiful experience that I had in a school in Australia. So you could see how children plan things, how they communicate, and how they try to think interdependently, and how they have fun and excitement while they are doing this.
Oh, I had an extra one, guys. Max, I could. No, but it's nearly done. You can like it. There. Okay, guys. Oh, so where's another lamp? We need 2 more lamps. Have a turn yours, Tom. Whoa! This is my marble. Let's do a higher. No, I don't think so. It will crash. Look, this. It's a stink bomb. Oh, mine would jump. No, you have to make it. Because you can escape or jump. Good, that's it. Or you could, if you want to go faster. No, now we have to go.
So I was delighted to see hours and hours and hours of children engage in good play, and the teachers observing the children, creating opportunities for them to test theories. Because another way of thinking is to have theories, hypotheses of how things work. And during play, that's what children do. They're testing hypotheses, practicing trial and error, and they are learning, and they are learning to hear from other children as well, because when a project becomes something exciting, other kids always join, and then they contribute in different ways. John Dewey says that give the pupil something to do, not something to learn, and the doing is of such a nature as to demand thinking, learning, and naturally results. So when we see children's work, of course we get amazed with the visible aspect of the thinking. But even more important than that is to think and reflect what's happening in the child's mind. Because this mind is what produced this. So this is, when we understand this, then we will understand all the theories that he tested. So that's something that we will talk at the end of my conversation. And it's inviting children to self-reflect upon documentation. So the executive function is a high-level cognitive process required to plan and direct activities. And it has what David already mentioned, the working memory, inhibition, planning, cognitive flexibility. Here we'll have a little boy. Before and after he was part of this study, he was asked what is thinking. And you could see how he transferred these ideas of managing his impulsivity and using thinking for learning. And here it's the executive function that it's very clear. for some reason they...
You can see it now. About learning.
The thing is about learning
And thinking about how to write and do things and know
hold on, and
our friends.
how to write
And no hearing our friends. Or in the house.
in the class or
You could see the executive functions also work with classroom management when children have to manage their impulsivity and their behaviors, and also with learning. So children are getting that message at early ages as they realize how the executive function works. So executive function skills are crucial building blocks for the early development of both cognitive and social capabilities. And for those of you who are in early childhood, see the critical job that we have? The growth in the first 5 years of executive functions. So we have a very important role in helping children become self-regulated, to understand how their mind works. So this is my masterpiece video clip, because this little boy tells us the whole, he summarized this whole conversation. You could see how he's using metacognition. He's also talking about the theory of the mind, and he's also revealing how all these conditions helps him become literate.
Well, that's a hard question. This and whatever picture comes there, you just tell them that's what's right. But this is not a test. It's no right or wrong. And when my brain just gets something in it and it just tells me to draw it. Used for my imagination and my what is that? And my reading minds and stuff and my dreams. It's used for those things. Your brain just, that's what it does when you draw stuff. It's just like when you draw. Like I draw two people and they were reading each other's mind. That's why I did these.
what are those?
And that's what I pretended those these were words because I didn't really know how to spell the words. Okay. And you put them in those little bubbles. Are also one of the things invisible. They just come up.
Come up where? Show me.
So you could see how this child, in his pre-test, when you ask him what he's thinking, he told a story that he was in the woods and it was cold and then they got some blankets. So that's associative thinking. It's just thinking about something. But here, he is more aware of what thinking is. When I ask adults what thinking is, it's a shocking question because we use thinking all the time. But expanding our knowledge about thinking, it's a little challenge. So for kids, the same, and it's a hard question. But then he starts describing and making connections that something's happening in his mind. And you could see the theory of the mind when the child says, I cannot read someone else's thinking. So then he created the two bubbles. And you see the literacy. Because what I have seen is that thinking pushes writing. Because at a certain point, children can draw a lot of things and they are very sophisticated. If you value children's drawings, they can tell you wonderful stories. But when it comes to abstract thinking, then they are pushed to find another way of representing their thinking, and that's the writing. Yeah, you could represent things, abstract concepts, things that you cannot do with a drawing, with writing. And he said, you could see here when he said, yeah, that he wrote these two because he couldn't read his minds, but he also put these scribbles because he didn't know how to write, how to spell. So well, that tells the teacher, okay, this kid has the need to communicate. So he says, I draw some things to people reading other people's minds. These are, when we pretend words, because I don't know how to spell them. So Catherine Snow and Resnick, they said that speaking and listening are foundation skills for reading and writing. Speaking and listening make children smarter. By doing such things as thinking aloud, asking questions, listening to others, discussing topics, and collaborating and solving problems with others, children learn about objects, facts, people, and ideas that make up their world. So you saw when they were doing the image with La Curandera, how they were discussing things that were happening with them. So language learning is a socially mediated process. Here you see this 2-year-old being read a book, and the teacher adjusted the see, think, and wonder routine in a dialogic reading experience. Oh my God. The mouse was a little bit lost there.
¿Qué es? ¿Lobito? ¿Quién es Lobito? Este. ¿Se parece a tu perro? Sí. ¿Y qué está haciendo ese perro?
Viendo esto. Los pescados.
Mira los pescados.
No, está amigo.
¿Y este? ¿Qué está haciendo Marley? ¿Qué está haciendo? ¿Dónde se
Mira, cabeza.
¿Y qué hizo el papá?
Y así. Así.
Sí, se tapó los ojos, bravo.
Tapó el rabo.
Y acá tiene.
Acá el niño.
¿Se va a caer?
Sí. Ahora yo venía a Borley.
Un besito.
A la mamá.
A la mami, sí. The end.
So in this video, you could see how the teacher mediates the language, and once again, how thinking pushes the child to develop other things. So she's mediating her with the thinking routine. She's helping the child develop vocabulary that the child doesn't have. For example, and something that we have seen a lot with very young children is that they communicate with their bodies. So we need to take that type of communication as valuable as the oral communication because they are telling a lot of things. But here the teacher is scaffolding the child. So when she said, when the child was trying to say that the dog covered his eyes, then the teacher says, oh, he covered his eyes. And the child said, yes, cover eyes in a baby talk, but he's expanding his language development. That's something that we are trying to find. So children don't learn to talk because they want to learn to talk about the language. They learn to talk because they want to talk about the world. And this is a phrase from Courtney Caston. And for me, this has been inspiring. How can we pretend children to communicate if they don't have nothing to say? If someone asked me to tell you or to give you a speech about baseball here in front of this audience, I will probably be behind this podium. Yeah, so if I'm here happy to talk, is because I want to share the things that I know and that I like. So here's another beautiful story of young children and who are discussing certain topics about life. So what I want you to see is how they create theories and how the teacher helped them. She's using the see, think, and wonder routine at the
I'm
same
gonna give you a short amount of time just for you guys to see. You don't have to tell teacher these see nothing right now. Just see. I want you guys to see at these two pictures.
I see the baby caterpillar.
You see a baby caterpillar?
Cocoon. Chrysalis.
Out of the chrysalis, the cocoon. What color are those eggs?
No, I think these, when you put them a little closer, it's white. I think they're white.
Oh, Jose Carlos says when the camera looks closer to the egg, it looks white. But because it's on the leaf, it looks yellow. What was here, right? We saw many things going on in this picture, but we haven't yet talked about what's going on in this
I
picture.
see eating customers. I love them big kids. Then they turn there. Oh, they're dying because they have another baby.
Oh, so you're thinking that people are dying because they're gonna have another baby? Is that what you're thinking? And what makes you say that, Alex?
Because I think the baby is inside our tummy.
Oh, Alex is saying that he thinks that this baby is inside this tummy and then the mom dies. And why do you think the mom is gonna die? Why do you say that?
Oh, wait, mom's will die. Let me talk to Alex. I have to do.
Go talk to Alex. Let's see why Alex is saying that.
When the baby is inside the mommy's tummy, the mommy doesn't die. Because when somebody's old, somebody dies. Yeah, but died? No, I don't think.
You don't think? What do you think is happening in this picture?
I know.
Let's see and think. What do we think is happening? The baby is.
Somebody is old, somebody died. Because when the baby's inside a mommy's tummy, nobody dies.
Why do you say that?
Because nobody dies.
Why? Tell me more about it.
Oh, and he died. But this guy.
Oh, so you say that this mom, which is an adult, turns to this man here, right? That's at old age. And then you die? After you're at old age, you die? Is that what happens? You don't want to be old? Well, guys, by looking at these two images, compare what is alike from a caterpillar's life and a human's life. What do you see that's similar?
I know.
Tell me.
It's a similar of this one.
Why do you say that, Jose Carlos?
I know the baby.
Wait, Eli. Let's listen to Jose Carlos. Right now, I'll give you your
These
turn.
both are babies.
These both are babies. So you see here that there's a baby what?
And a fortune.
A baby caterpillar. Wonderful connections. You guys said that the human life cycle was connected to the caterpillar's life cycle. You know what a life cycle is?
Around and around.
You go around and around and around.
Baby, child, and where's the die?
How do you
put die? How do you put die?
No, I didn't put died there. Because you guys still have a long time.
Lo quedamos iguales.
Nos quedamos iguales.
No.
That's right. We do.
That we changed to other people.
You think we transform into a butterfly when they ate it? No, they didn't transform.
Okay, so as you can see, all the cultural forces reflected here, how the teacher respects the child's thinking, despite the fact that the concept of death is something that's stressing for the children, but the children are, but she's letting the children construct their own knowledge, and at a certain point, death was not reflected there, and you see how the child wanted that to be represented there. So children always follow a sequence. They start with an initial theory. When they hear feedback with facts or have discussion, they create new theories. So here you saw 3 different theories emerging. And how do you put die, for example, and here the connection with literacy. A language arises initially as a means of communication between the child and his environment. I think this got stuck. Or any technology person who can help us with this? It's not working. I don't know if it's the battery or, oh, there we go. There we go. So here you see, here in this video clip, you could see a strong link between metacognition and how children make the connection with literacy. Because language is really a component of cognition along with attention and executive function. Something's wrong with the... Okay, let's continue. Plan B. Oh, the video is not working. It was working in our try. Well, I guess there's a technical issue here. Oh. Okay, well, anyway. So, where's the technical person can help us? When learners speak or write or draw their ideas, they deepen their cognition. So it's important to see who are we in the life of our children. This got stuck. So as you know, Vygotsky says that children grow into the intellectual life of those around them. So it depends on how your expectations, for me, is the key word to create opportunities for them to learn. So metacognition refers to the knowledge of your own cognitive process. Metacognitive learners learn how to learn. As they understand their learning process, they realize the importance of this executive function for the success in school and life. So this is a little treat, I love it, from this group of kids, also from Australia, who were teaching me how they conceive thinking. Because with the other kids, we have been doing the visible thinking, but I had the challenge to bring visible thinking to school where the kids spend 90% of the time playing. So what happened is that I asked them what is thinking, and they made these wonderful connections of their play. So then what we did is we recorded that, we documented that, and we showed them a video of them while they were at play, like the one that I showed you before. And then we used thinking routines. What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder, for example? Later, when they were playing spontaneously, they began to use the routines as their own. So they were, while they were creating a structure, what do you see here? Oh, I wonder this. What makes you say that? So that's the lesson that the children gave me. So let's see this video.
About what thinking is.
Having ideas. And I had an idea right now of making gun cars.
What's every time?
Where you want to put some pieces of a puzzle.
Where you want to put some pieces of a puzzle?
Where they fit. When I read books. When you read
books?
in space.
Ari, when do you use thinking?
When I make different type of airplanes.
When you make
In a book, in my book. I don't know which one I want
If you had a puzzle in front of you right now, and you had some pieces that needed to go in the puzzle, what would you be thinking about?
Stuck in the head.
Your thoughts would be stuck in your head, but what would you be thinking about? Thinking when you were making your paper planes.
So the big lessons that I learned from these kids is that play also carries a lot of opportunities for them to think. That it is our role to make it worth it and to bring that play and those cognitive actions into a word. So at that point, oh, you are making an inference. Your hypothesis is that if you use this toboggan this way, it will flow this way. And or if you create the airplane, the paper aeroplane, is that how they say in Australia, what is going to make it fly or not fly. So all of these things were taught by these kids to me. Also, they made the connection of reading, and unfortunately, we couldn't see the video before, but in that video, what the child is saying is that thinking is when you read a book, and when you can transfer that book to another situation, and you can dream about your things and make your dreams a reality. And then she begins to use her pen, pretending that she's drawing. So children also connect their thinking with drawing, and as you saw in the first video, when they say, okay, thinking is when you have images in your head, then you draw them or you create a video. So they are finding different ways of making their thinking visible. So with that said, I don't know if we have time for questions, but I think these ideas are powerful to understand the process of language and literacy development, because it's important that children get into control of their thinking, that they become aware of how thinking works, and to develop a theory of mind. And many children who have disabilities, while reading my literature about executive functions, the literature is connected with children with attention deficit disorder, but I think this is a topic that all of us should be aware, because that's how children will be in control of their work. So thank you so much, and if you want to continue the conversation, you're more than welcome to connect. Thank you.